It's perfect. Those were the words that came out of my mouth after I had been shown the tour of my new apartment. I was 22 at the time and I was going to college in the city. Like most big cities, finding a good apartment seemed impossible as I had been searching for months, and it wasn't until the last week of the 4th month that I found something I really liked. To be honest, I was shocked no one had snatched it up already. It had a spacious living room, a usable kitchen, enough bathrooms, and a perfect bedroom. I loved everything about it. Well, almost everything. The air in the apartment was a bit thick, and this was because of the numerous perfumed air fresheners that were situated all over the apartment. I didn't know why the place needed that many air fresheners, but it was the only mandatory thing that my landlord, Mr. Terrence, asked for. My opinions on my landlord, Mr. Terrence, were pretty normal. He was an awkward but quiet guy, which was a bit weird to me as he had a really huge build, so his character didn't match his appearance. As he stood in the apartment with me, Mr. Terrence looked at me and said, "So that's it, Nathan. Remember to leave the air fresheners on every day, in addition to spray a new can in the living room every morning before you leave." He then handed me a box filled with new air fresheners. The obsession with the perfumed air fresheners was a bit weird to me, but I didn't say a word, seeing as he offered this apartment to me for a very low price. To be honest, the low price was another thing that was odd to me, as the apartment was a bit on the fancier side and it clearly cost more than that. So I was really shocked when he immediately agreed to let me live there for the low rent fee that I could offer. And I could recall that during our first meeting, it really seemed like he just wanted someone to live there. But I wasn't complaining because I saw it as a huge win for me, and after settling in, I slept happily that night in my new apartment. So it had been a couple of weeks since I moved into the new apartment, and while I still loved the place, I noticed a couple of strange things that were going on. For starters, I noticed that the other tenant who lived in the building actively avoided my apartment like a plague. I remember spending days wondering why they did that. At first, I thought they were just jealous of my place, but as time went by, I realized that it wasn't jealousy. These people were truly terrified of my apartment, and the look of fear on their faces every time they crossed the hall said it all. Due to this strange behavior, the only people who visited my apartment were my friends from college. On one particular day when I was coming back home, I overheard some of the tenants talking about my place, and through the course of the conversation, I heard them call it the cursed apartment. Now, I wasn't one to believe petty gossip, but I would be lying if I said the strange rumors didn't worry me. That night, I went to bed trying to get some sleep, but I kept thinking about what I heard earlier. So in order to get more comfortable, I turned in my bed to assume a better sleeping position. But as I was turning out of the corner of my eye, I could see the silhouette of a huge man looming over me. The terrifying sight made my heart skip as I tried my best to muffle a scream. From the slight glimpse, I could tell the man was a lot bigger than me, so a direct confrontation would surely end badly for me. But I also knew that lying still and pretending to sleep wasn't a smart idea, as the intruder was bound to attack sooner or later. So I planned out the last best option in my head, and I put it into action. With no hesitation, I threw my blanket towards the intruder. Stunned that I was awake, he made an attempt to grab me, but the blanket I threw at him bought me some time, and within seconds, I ran at full speed towards my bathroom. Once I was safely inside, I locked the door and called the cops, screaming. While the cops were on their way, I listened at the door to see if the intruder was making his move, but all I heard was silence. I assumed it was a play made by the intruder to make me lower my guard, so I stayed in the bathroom till the cops arrived. When the cops arrived, they searched the apartment before letting me out of the bathroom. I was then asked a couple of questions, and I told them everything they needed to know. But after looking around and carrying out a small investigation, the cops began to doubt my claim as the head officer asked me, "Are you sure you saw someone in here? Because from the look of things, it really seems like no one apart from you was here." Confused, I said, "But I'm sure I saw someone watching me while I was sleeping. He also attempted to attack me." The officer then looked at me and said, "Well, we checked the door and there was no signs of breaking and entering." Baffled at his statement, I didn't know what else to say. As if there weren't any signs of breaking in, I didn't have any proof apart from my word. The officer saw I was having a hard time making sense of things, so he said, "Look, kid, I know you are confused right now, but I heard it's finals week, so maybe the pressures of the exam is getting to you and making you see things. Trust me, College finals can do that to a man. The other officers laughed at his joke, but I didn't. I was still in shock, and I wasn't in the mood to laugh. The cops left after a while, and they told me to be sure that there was someone before I called the next time. The week that followed after that incident was horrible, as I couldn't sleep well and I was jumping at the sound of every little thing. Soon the rumors of the apartment being cursed started to seem true to me, and I eventually couldn't take it anymore. So the next day, I went across the hall and begged my neighbor, older Lady Grace, to tell me why my apartment was the subject of many rumors and if those rumors were true. When we had settled in her apartment, she told me a morbid tale about how, for the past 12 years, all 8 tenants who have lived in my apartment had mysteriously disappeared. She said that back-to-back disappearances had caused quite a stir in the neighborhood, and people started getting anxious. But even with all the tension, it was only the people who lived in my apartment who went missing. She then said the cops had opened up numerous missing persons cases due to the rising number of grieving families, but the bodies of all 8 tenants were never found. She then added that Mr. Terrence, my landlord, was always questioned after every one of his tenants had gone missing, but he always proved he had nothing to do with it, and he always walked free. As she spoke about Mr. Terrence, I noticed she had a bit of anger in her voice, so I asked, "Hey, I know this is a bit forward, Miss Grace, but do you have anything against my landlord, Terrence?" The old woman then looked at me and said, "No, I have no problems with him, but there's something about that man. You're young, so you won't understand, but I can see things, and something isn't right with him." Her words struck me as I left her apartment. I told myself that I really didn't find anything wrong with my landlord, Terrence. Apart from the incessant use of air fresheners, he seemed like a nice man, but even then, I wasn't going to take any chances. That night, I stayed up doing research on the cases, and I found out everything that old Lady Grace said was true. So I made up my mind to move. I started making preparations to move the next day. I managed to get a place to stay as one of my friends allowed me to stay with him until I found another place. To avoid any problems, I decided not to tell Mr. Terrence that I was moving till the next morning when I was ready to leave. I can't really remember, but I'm guessing it was due to the abrupt moving process, as I forgot to put on or spray the air fresheners that morning. I spent the whole day at my friend's house, setting up my things, and after a long day's work, I went back home knowing it'd be the last night I'd spend in the strange apartment. But when I got home, a truly morbid and rancid smell filled my nostrils. It was so bad that I found it hard to breathe. I rushed to open a window or get a can of air fresheners when the words, "So I heard you're moving," made me freeze. I slowly turned around to see who said the sentence, and standing there in the dark was my landlord, Mr. Terrence. Fear filled me as I started to stutter the words. What are you doing here, Mr. Terrence?" Totally ignoring my question, he said, "Why didn't you tell me you were moving? Were you just going to leave?" I then slowly answered him with, "I was going to tell you in the morning, Mr. Terrence." My landlord then looked at me and said, "Why are you leaving? Because of some false rumors that you heard? You'd be a fool to give up this apartment after I basically let you live here for a non-existent price." It was dark, and I couldn't see Mr. Terrence's face, but I could hear the rising anger in his voice, so I said, "You're scaring me now, Mr. Terrence, and I think you need to leave." He ignored my statement again before proceeding to say something that I wasn't expecting. As Terrence looked at me, dead in the eyes, he said in a calm voice, "Do you collect anything, Nathan?" Stunned at the totally irrelevant question, I didn't know what to say. But before I could answer the question, he said, "Well, I do. You see, Nathan, I collect these things called human beings. To be honest, I currently have 8 in my collection, and I'm looking to increase that number to 9 by the end of this night." It took me a while for my mind to register the horrifying statement that my landlord had just made. But before I could react, he lunged at me with his fist in the air. Within seconds, he was in front of me, but I managed to dodge the dangerous punch. His hand went through the drywall, and the wall pieces went flying through the air. Frustrated, he pulled his hand out of the wall, and for a split second, everything clicked as I had a horrible realization about Mr. Terrence's collectibles. It was dark, but there was no mistaking it. Staring right at me was a rotting corpse situated in the wall of my apartment. My mind started unraveling at the ghastly sight, but I didn't stop because I knew if I didn't do something quickly, I would soon join his collection inside the walls. Mr. Terrence was free now, and as he saw my pale face, he said, "I see you've seen where I keep my wonderful collectibles. Don't worry, you'll soon make a fine addition." I rushed for the door, but I wasn't quick enough as he managed to tackle me into a table. The contents of the table spilled over as we fell to the floor struggling. I fought back with all my strength, but it was hopeless as he was 2 times bigger than me. And it didn't take long before he had his arms wrapped around my neck. I don't know if you've ever been strangled before, but there aren't enough words to describe how painful it is. I couldn't breathe as I felt him put his whole weight down on my neck. I gasped for air as the world around me began to dim. I thrashed and struggled to look for something, anything that I could use to defend myself, and I was about to give up before I felt it. One of my hands thrashing had managed to get a hold of an air freshener can. It must have been one of the cans that fell when we collided into the table. I knew the can wasn't strong enough to knock him out, so I decided to temporarily blind him. With no hesitation, I picked up the can and sprayed it in his eyes. He screamed and reached for his eyes as he finally let go of my neck. I then struck his head with the can before rushing to the door, and as I opened it, I ran into the arms of numerous cops that had just arrived. I would later find out Old Lady Grace had heard the noises from my apartment, so she called the cops. I don't know if it was from the fighting or the fear, but I passed out there, happy that I had survived the cursed apartment. After that incident, numerous things surrounding the apartment were revealed. Mr. Terrence was arrested, and after his apartment was searched and tore down, over 8 badly preserved corpses were found in the walls, and each and every one of them was identified as the bodies of his former tenants. After interrogations, Mr. Terrence also confessed to watching his tenants, potential victims, when they slept. He also went into details about how he got the preserved bodies into the walls, as he said he managed to do it all under the ruse of remodeling the apartment. He then finally confessed to keeping a spare key to the apartment, a key that was unknown to his residents. The families of the victims called for him to be put to death, but he was instead sentenced to life imprisonment. After the whole case had been settled, I moved back to the suburbs with my family. I didn't finish college as I was told I needed time to heal from the traumatizing event. Even after all this time, the therapy still doesn't work, as there's nothing anyone can tell me to make me get over the fact that I slept in a room filled with 8 corpses for over 4 months. But on the bright side, I left the morbid experience with a lesson, as I realized that it's not only people that have stories. Places too always have a tale to tell, and those tales should be important to anyone who is deciding to live or stay in those places, because the knowledge of those tales may one day save or end your life. Sometimes in life, you do a silly prank that turns out to be doomsday for someone else. Well, that's exactly what happened to me when I was a kid. I grew up in a huge house by the beach with my little sister Amy. She was a year younger than me. Being the youngest and the pretty little princess of our family, everyone loved her like crazy. My mom always gave me a lecture on how I need to be the big brother and take care of her all the time. All that overflown love spoiled my sister to such an extent that she became stubborn and nagging whenever things didn't go her way. In front of my parents and family, she would behave like she is the angel on the earth. But in reality, she was different in the wrong way. She never apologized after making a mistake, and no matter how many times she got punished, she always found her way around it. I guess it was partially my mother's fault for being too easy on her. I still remember the day the principal called Dad saying there has been an accident in school. I was with my grandparents, but when I came home, I heard a girl named Sally was found dead in the girls' bathroom. No one knows what exactly happened to her, but it seemed like she slipped somehow and smashed her face on the glass mirror, leading to the broken glass cutting her eyeballs in half. She bled to death. Yeah, it was a pretty violent sight. When the cops inquired everyone about this incident, the school janitor said he saw Amy coming out of the washroom right before Sally's body was discovered. But she was just a little girl. Who would suspect her, right? But I knew. I knew what she was. With more days passing, I started to become scared of her. Yeah, scared of my little sister. Funny, huh? But when you wake up in the middle of the night finding your weird sister standing near your bed, looking at you with her shiny green eyes and expressionless face, you can't laugh it off. Why did she do that? I don't know, and I never dared to ask. Whoever didn't agree with her or said no faced a consequence labeled under the tag of an accident. She loved stomping on any insect, even if it's miles away from her. She grabbed butterflies with her soft red fingers and tore their wings apart with joy. Whenever birds hurt their wings and landed in our backyard, instead of aiding them like every normal kid, Amy fed the already suffering bird to our neighbor's ferocious dog. She chuckled in excitement as the dog shredded the flapping bird into bits and pieces. My parents never paid attention to her cruel nature, even if I told them repeatedly. But one day, things took a dangerous turn. We used to go to the beach almost every weekend. I loved walking by the shore, submerging my feet into the salty waves. At some distance from the shore, there were rusty old caves. The area was secluded, as very few people went there. Whenever I needed a place to escape, I used to go there. I pretended like the caves were my kingdom, and I was the king of an invisible ray. I kept lots of my toys there, and everything I could collect from the beach. I never told Amy about this place, but nothing can be hidden from her vulture eyes. One weekend, we went to the beach and my parents put up a small picnic near the shore. Amy got busy building her sandcastles and then demolishing them with one kick. I think she felt more joy in destroying them than building them. I secretly snuck out from there and went to my territory. I put up a wooden plank on the entrance of a small cave like a door to my castle. I slowly shifted the plank and got inside. I was just about to close it when I heard a chuckle behind me. Out of fear and shock, I turned around and found Amy sitting inside the cave already. "You think you can hide from me?" she said in her cold, squeaky voice. "I wasn't hiding from you. I just came here to be with myself," I replied and sat down on the ground. "You hate me, right? Secretly, you wish I was never born, right?" "What? I don't wish that." "Oh, but I do. I wish I was the only child and mommy and daddy never had you. I would have gotten all their attention. You anyway get that. Don't worry, once I grow up, I'll move far away from you all." "You're such a dork. Come on, let's go." Amy got up and started to walk out of the cave. Where are you going?" I asked impatiently. "I saw a big cave at the back. Don't you want to explore that?" Her eyes sparkled as she said this. "But we can lose our way. Besides, what if there's something inside those caves? Like what? A tiger? Don't be an idiot. Let's go. Also, I want to try this out." So far, I didn't notice her hands, but as I did, I saw she was holding Dad's metal detector. I know Dad keeps his things in his study, and we're not supposed to touch them. I said in a tense voice, "Why did you bring that? You know we shouldn't be playing with Dad's equipment." "Oh, come on. He wouldn't know unless you tell him. And you won't tell him." I knew she was not going to back off. We came out and started walking to the big cave behind the bushes. The summer wind created a rustling sound in the coconut trees. The big old cave stood like an epitome of mystery. Moss and fungus were growing all over its wall. Amy stopped right in front of the cave and stared at the dark, hollow entrance ahead. "Why are we even here?" I asked fearfully. "We are going to look for treasure. Don't you remember the story Mom told us last night? Caves like this are filled with treasures. Now let's go for our treasure hunt." Amy handed me a small flashlight and told me to show the way. I realized how mean and selfish she is. If anything bad came at us, she wanted me to face it. My own sister was using me as her shield just to have some fun in a stupid treasure hunt. But she was very greedy. If Amy found something attractive, my parents had to buy it for her, and if they didn't, she didn't hesitate to steal it at all. Mom's story triggered her to think she was going to find a hidden treasure inside this cave. That's why she brought Dad's metal detector. But I was sure. I knew she would go home empty-handed. I was walking with a flashlight while she strolled with her metal detector behind me. The continuous beeping of the detector echoed in the cave. Accidentally, I flashed a light on the ceiling and an army of ugly, stinky bats flew over us, scaring the hell out of me. Ah! You silly! Don't flash your light on them, idiot! Amy didn't respect me at all. Maybe it was her cruel nature that made her immune to all kinds of jump scares. She snatched the flashlight from my hand and took the lead. Without saying a single word, I followed her. Even though she was not the perfect sister, I couldn't ditch her inside a dark cave. After walking for a minute or so, the metal detector started to make a rapid sound, denoting it had found something. Amy crouched down and started to dig the wet, muddy ground with her beach shovel. Within 5 seconds, she screamed in joy. "Look what I found!" She lifted her hand, and in the flashlight, I saw a sparkling bracelet. Her face lit up even more greed. The bracelet was shining like the stars in the night sky. I didn't at all expect something like this to be found here. Amy picked up the detector and started walking ahead. I stopped her saying, "Well, you got your treasure. Let's go now. It's getting dark and Mom will be worried." "No way. We have just started. If you want to go, you can go." "Fine. I am done here." I turned back while Amy went in with the detector and flashlight. The beeping sound faded away with her footsteps. I was about to come out when I heard my sister's spine-chilling scream. I ran inside, irrespective of the darkness. I could barely see ahead when I heard a collapse of boulders. At the end of the cave, I found Amy's flashlight. The glass got broken, but was still on. A beeping sound was going crazy in the dark, and there was another sound in that empty cave. The sound of a little girl choking. I flashed the light following the sound, and I couldn't blink anymore. Amy was lying on the ground, smashed under big rocks falling from the roof of the cave. Her partial face had no features. Flesh and blood were all over the place. But with the half remaining face, she was staring at me. She was looking at me with one eye and trying to tell me something, but the excessive blood choked her. She coughed blood. Her body trembled like those wounded birds when the neighbor's dog ate them alive. I will never be able to get that sight out of my mind. My parents rescued me with the help of the cops. After searching for us for almost an hour, they finally came to look at these caves and found me standing like a statue near my dead sister. It was all an accident. No one had any doubt of that. My mom never spoke a word after that. Cops said the cave's roof somehow collapsed and it was nothing but an unfortunate event. I won't say that I don't miss her, but we learned to move on. I accepted her fate and grieved for her terrible death for years. But yesterday, my mom passed away in her sleep, and her attorney handed me a letter that she left for me. The letter read, "My dear Jim, we all loved Amy in our own ways. I know you resent me for not raising her with more discipline and good habits. I agree I was weak, but then I finally realized. The day Sally died, I knew what a monster I had created. I had to put an end to this. The cave's roof didn't collapse on its own. I was the one who buried the bracelet inside and told Amy the made-up story about treasure just to make her go there looking for it. I sacrificed my own child so that she can't hurt anyone else. It was better that she got the punishment from me rather than rotting in a cell for the rest of her life. I hope you forgive me for taking your sister away too soon. I am glad that at least one of my children grew up to be a human being. Love, Mom."
I'm not really someone that tells stories. If I were at a party or with a group of friends, I'd be that girl who would just listen and keep to herself. But in life, something happens, and you have to tell somebody to, at least, get that weight off your chest. I was in my second year of studying business management at a highly respected college. I don't want to mention which school it was because, as I said, I'm a private person. Moving on, I was on a break. Summer break, and like all introverted kids do, instead of going to parties and hanging out with friends, I decided that the mature thing to do was to get a job. My dad always said, you have to work hard if you want to make it in this world. As I was walking past a pizza shop that I frequently visited during my late-night cramming sessions, when I needed food and energy drinks to have the stamina to stay awake, I saw that they were hiring. One thing led to another, and there I was, behind the counter with a red apron on, surrounded by the smell of delicious pizza 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I know what you're thinking. Seems like a great summer job. Well, bear with me here. Each day was the same. Regulars would come in, order the usual, and after some chit-chat while the pizza would be done or the slice would be heated up, they'd be on their way. Occasionally, new customers would enter, and believe it or not, that was the hardest part of the job. As a shy person, I managed to get used to regulars and became comfortable speaking to them, but new faces always made me shell up. All was well and good at the pizza place until one horrific evening. I'll never forget that day. It was July 17th. It was pouring outside, and there were no clients except for one elderly man that was sitting at a table, enjoying his pizza in silence. Besides me and him, my manager Teddy was in the back doing what managers do best, watching TV, of course. It was about closing time, almost 20 minutes away to be exact, so I walked away from behind the counter and headed toward the empty tables. With my trusty rad in hand, I was carefully taking care of the crumbs and pepperoni slices that fell from people's mouths. Yeah, glamorous, indeed. As I was doing my job, the bell that was attached right above the door rang. I couldn't believe it. Who'd come by this late, and especially in this weather? But then I remembered. I was their most loyal customer during finals. As I looked up, it was a man. Quite tall, dressed all in black, having the collar of his soaked jacket as high as it could go, while at the same time wearing a black, cowboy-style hat that covered his eyes. All I could see as he walked in was his big nose. "I'll be right with you, sir," I said while he took a seat at a table. I just finished cleaning. Normally clients would come and order at the counter, but seeing that he had already sat down and taking into consideration the fact that I was not busy at all, I decided to do a good deed and take his order at the table. I came back in a flash, and seeing that he was soaking wet with water dripping all over the table and the floor, I told him politely with a big smile on my face, "Sir, you know you can hang your hat and coat on the coat rack behind you." Without even acknowledging my suggestion, he put his hand on the table. I could see a poorly done snake tattoo, which looked like it would have been done in prison. A slight chill went down my spine. After a moment of silence when neither of us said anything, I moved on and asked him what he wanted to eat. "Surprise me," he responded. His voice was low. Maybe he smoked, who knows, but as he said those words, I took a step back in fear. There was something off about him. I could sense it. I quickly turned around and went straight to the place where we stored our slices of pizza. We only had pepperoni and cheese, so I decided to heat up that first slice. That's the one I wouldn't have gotten for myself. A minute passed and I was already at his table, shaking in my boots, metaphorically speaking, as I was wearing Chuck Taylors. As I went to put the plate in front of him, that big hand with the snake tattoo grabbed mine. I froze. I didn't know what was going on. "What's your name, little girl?" the man said while raising his head so we made eye contact. As I stared into his eyes, I felt a sense of terror. That man was up to no good, and without even skipping a beat, I tried to get my hand free while screaming, "Let go!" The fact that I screamed didn't seem to bother him. He just smiled, revealing the unhealthiest teeth I'd ever seen in my life. "The lady told you to let her go," the elderly man said while seeing that I was in trouble. At the same time, Teddy came from the back, hearing all the commotion. "Sir, you need to let her go and leave the premises," Teddy told him in an authoritarian tone, but while he kept his distance. The man kept holding my hand for a couple of seconds more and then he let go. "See you later, Amy," he said while walking out the door. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How did he know my name? I started to freak out, but Teddy calmed me down. "You have a name tag on," he said. I felt like such a fool for freaking out, but nonetheless, that man let out a bad vibe and he ruined mine as well. Seeing that I was distressed and remembering that the man told me that he would see me later, Teddy offered to drive me home. "Come on, it's raining and that creepy dude even gave me the chills. Let me drive you home and make sure you're safe," Teddy kindly said, and I was okay with it. The drive wasn't long at all, but it seemed to calm me down. I went inside my house before I waved at Teddy, and there I was, safe at last, with a tub of ice cream in my lap and browsing Netflix. What to watch, I kept saying to myself while whistling some tune I just made up in my head. After settling on a movie title, I got comfy in the couch. All of a sudden, my power went off. Great. It's raining. No one is going to come and fix it. Maybe I can do it myself, I said while getting up and looking for the fuse box. The bad thing was I left my phone at the shop, and I didn't have a flashlight in the entire house, so I had to improvise and let my vision adapt to the darkness. That didn't work, of course. As I was stumbling on my way back to the fuse box, a strange sound disturbed me. It sounded like the floor creaking, but I was the only one in the house, and the sound came from another room. Now I got scared, and I hid in a dark corner. "Amy, come out, little girl. Why didn't you let me eat my pizza?" Oh no, it was that creep from the store. I'm definitely going to die, I said to myself, as he was slowly walking towards my direction and calling my name while a big knife glistened in the dark. I knew that if I didn't do something, I'm going to die. With each step he took, I remained completely silenced, holding my breath at times. When he got right next to me, I kicked him as hard as I could in his leg, but the man didn't budge. He grabbed me by the hair and he lifted me up. "You're a bad girl, Amy," he said while holding the knife inches from my face. The next thing he did was throw me on the ground with such force that I slid into the wall. "We'll play a game. You run, and if I catch you, I kill you," the murderer said while letting out a creepy laugh. I started running upstairs, and he was right behind me. I grabbed a lamp in despair and threw it at his head, breaking it into a million pieces. Of course, the man didn't budge, and he continued chasing me. I got into the bedroom, and I locked the door while I screamed. Without even skipping a beat, he kicked the door in. He was so strong, I knew I was doomed. There was nothing I could have done to escape. That was it, my time to die. Walking slowly towards me, he grabbed me by the neck and put the knife right on my neck. Feeling the cold blade and the blood rush to my veins, I closed my eyes, hoping for a miracle. All of a sudden, I could hear something. "Amy, it's Teddy. You forgot your phone at the shop. Are you okay?" Teddy said. He was downstairs and saw that I had no power, even though the rest of the houses on my block were fine. The man told me to shut up, as he guided me out of my bedroom and at the top of the stairs, so I could tell Teddy to set the phone on the table and leave. I'm fine. You can leave the phone and go. I want to go to bed," I said, and Teddy did just that. That was it. My last hope was gone. The man took me downstairs and sat me on the couch. "How do you want to die?" he asked. But before I could say anything, he fell to the ground unconscious. Teddy knew that something was wrong and stuck around, grabbing a baseball bat from his car and hitting the guy on the head. While he was unconscious, we called the police and he was arrested after I told the cops what had happened. Later, I found out that several bodies were at his home and other murders were linked to him. The police officer said that I was very lucky that Teddy stuck around, or else the murderer would still be free to this day, and I wouldn't have been here.